Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world, following hot on the heels, relatively, of the video covering the Vollwygun alternative model. It is time once again to look at alternative models for the Empire of Man. This time we're having a look at the Hellblaster Volleygun. Once again, the miniature is produced by Highland Miniatures, and I obtained one of these through a 3D printing company on Etsy. It's the same company as I used for the Vollwygun. If you've not seen that video, do please check it out. There are details of the seller as part of that video and my comments on the service provided. So without any further ado, let's now have a look at the Hellblaster Volleygun. You'll see from the picture in front of you how it has come out. Really crisp print. I'm really happy with how it came out. The one downside I would say is there's an alternative head that are available. So two of the models come with head options, and one of those heads is wearing a hat. There is an awful lot of flash on both copies, as I bought two organ guns. Both the heads with the hats on had a lot of flash around the face. It looked like it was going to be quite a delicate cleanup job, so I simply opted to use the alternate heads that were available. So aside from that, it was minimal cleanup job really for these models. As is traditional for this sort of video, before I go on to look at the final painted product, let's cast our attention to what is the Hellblaster Volleygun. Is it good, and if so, what gets it to that position? From my position, really, as an Empire player, I think a Hellblaster Volleygun or more is pretty much a go-to staple of my army lists. The question is, why? Now, on the face of it, there are definitely some weaknesses when it comes to the Hellblaster. It's only got a 24-inch range, for example, which means it can be difficult to get shots off in turn one, particularly if you end up going first. And I think as an Empire player, I certainly want to be going first as often as possible to maximise the opportunities I've got to shoot my opponent before they get across the board and into my lines. But we've got to recall, I suppose, within this context that artillery does get a free rotation. So you can start with the long edge of your base on the 24-inch gap line and then simply rotate round to bring guns into range for anyone who's well advanced. It does make your artillery vulnerable, particularly if you've got a quick moving enemy that's going to want to potentially vanguard or anything like that, but it can help keep people honest with that risk factor. That is, of course, to bring us on to what is the risk factor. The Hellblaster Volleygun is basically a souped up organ gun. Strength 5, AP -1, Armor Bane 2. But unlike an organ gun, which rolls 2 artillery dice to decide how many shots it's going to fire, this bad boy gets 3. Now, these aren't automatically hitting shots. You're going to have to roll to hit as well. And the Hellblaster Volleygun, well, that comes with a native ballistic skill of 3. So you're looking at hitting at no better than a 4 up. Often it's going to be 5s or even higher depending on the circumstances. So potentially you've got 30 shots coming out of this thing. Potentially it could explode. If you roll a misfire on those artillery dice, the more misfires you get, the worse the weapon is for that round of shooting. 3 misfires, devastating. You're going to fire those 30 shots, but then you're exploding, and all of those shots are at an additional -1 to hit, so accuracy taking a further hit. 2 misfires, well, you're rolling on the misfire table, and a single misfire on one of those 3 artillery dice, then you're hitting at a -1 to hit. But Hellblasters really can't be looked at in a bubble, because they are part of a wider army, and this is something I think the Empire really really needs to play into, which is the support the individual parts of its army get. And with the artillery train as an Empire player, well, there lives a whole cadre of engineers. And I never leave the home for a game without one, preferably two, or possibly even three. What do engineers do? Well, these are at, 45 points? I think one of the best value characters floating around out there. Really, really love the engineers. They can allow an artillery piece that's in their command range to re-roll an artillery dice. So that means one of these misfires we're just talking about for the Hellblaster, you could re-roll that. You can re-roll it if you're getting a low number of shots and you really need a high number. If you want to gamble on that re-roll, that is an option. But what they can also do is use their ballistic skill of 4 to improve the accuracy of the gun once it's fired. I mentioned that in my lists I often have 2 or more engineers, 2 being the most normal number, I have to admit. They're there to babysit the Hellblasters and the cannon and things like that. Typically, I would look to fire my cannon first. Now, this isn't any particular science. This is because it's really a throwback to the days of former editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where because of guest range weapons existing and no pre-measurement, you had to fire your guest range weapons first. So cannons were the first things that fired in the shooting phase. So I tend to shoot those first anyway, unless there's a really good reason not to. One of the advantages of doing this, certainly firing them before other forms of artillery, like the Hellblaster, for example, is I know then if an engineer has used his reroll to support one of my great cannon. If not, and I tend to try and have 2 engineers, so both of my engineers, in range of my Hellblaster and one other cannon, because that allows the engineers to double team. Maybe I need to reroll 2 dice out of the 3. More likely, I'll probably want to re-roll one of the dice and then use the other engineer to boost my ballistic skill to make my gun more accurate. And let's face it, with an average roll of something around the region of 12 to 16 shots, at strength 5 with that armor penetrating and armor bane, just one volley gun can offer a supreme threat and radically reduce the numbers in a unit marching towards you. Yes, they can blow up. Yes, they can achieve nothing, which is always the risk with artillery. But they offer the huge potential as massive, massive damage dealers, which is why I tend to always have at least one floating around in my force. 120 points, I think, well spent, particularly when added up to those 45-point engineers that aren't just babysitting the one gun, they're offering a spread of stuff within their Leadership 8 bubble. So, that aside, let's now look at the final painted model. After another successful trip to the paint station, here we have the final product. I have to admit, rather than just the one I showed you in the picture earlier, when I bought the organ gun, I did in fact buy 2 of them. So, once again, much like the other resin model I did from Highland Miniatures recently, so the War Wagon, when you start painting these guys up, they really start to shine. There's a lot more hidden detail, but it's a very reasonable amount of detail. So it doesn't really make them overbearing to paint. You can pick them out, they can look pretty nice with a reasonably straightforward paint job. Very happy with how they have turned out. Looking forward very much to getting them on the tabletop. They're looking far better than the very old metal Hellblaster Volleygun I've got from Games Workshop, which was an absolute pig to put together. I think overall, these are models that I can thoroughly recommend if you're looking for a Hellblaster option, and don't really want to go down the Games Workshop route. Completing these particular models is quite exciting. Not only does it give me more Volleygun opportunities, and if I wanted to run Nuln, for example, for my Empire of Man, that gives me potential of 3 Volleyguns I could use. Some of them may be even using the Vanguard rule. I'm not sure I am going to ever use the Nuln rules, but it does give me that option. I've not got, at time of recording, an awful lot left which I need to paint in order to make sure that I'm hitting my goal of painting everything I've bought this year. So it does open the door to some further purchases and to expand either my Orc and Goblin or Empire forces. What will I get? I don't know at this point, but if there's anything brand new or good alternatives, I will, of course, let you know and talk you through my thought processes as to whether they're any good or not. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the video, you've found it useful in maybe your own thoughts around making purchases. If you've liked the video, obviously do consider that like and subscribe. It's a really helpful way of supporting the channel. It helps you identify when new content has come out from this channel, and overall, just a nice thing to do, really, isn't it? That being said, thank you very much for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.